Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. We are a year-round talk series bringing you the best creative voices across film, television, and theater, and I'm so excited today to be joined by the fantastically talented Miya Cech to talk all about Marvelous in the Black Hole. And I wanted to start by asking you about when you first were reading this script, because it's such a well-written young female character that's full of so many emotional layers. And when you first read the script, what were the aspects of this character that you just immediately understood exactly who she was, even beyond the lines of the script and the page?
Yeah, when I first read the script, I was really drawn by it because it was such a very different, very flawed character, and that's what made it real. And I was also, he was also Asian American, which was really cool. And she was, you kind of like don't even see that really. You don't see a flawed Asian American character really out on the screen because they're either like perfect student or well-behaved kid, and Sammy is like the exact opposite of that. And something that and that was really awesome. And then another thing, after reading the script and kind of getting to know like who was behind the project, another thing that drew me towards it was that the director, Kate Sang, based the script off of her own personal experience. And that was something that was really interesting to me because I want to be a director when I grow up. And so the way she kind of took her own experiences and own story and kind of made it into this wonderful film is and magical film is really just incredible.
Yeah. And I loved that you've talked about how you were over at her house one day working on the script and talking through a lot of the details of the character. And there was a question that you asked her that I thought was so brilliant and so clever, being that it was based on her experience, which was, is there anything that's not in the script that you want me to capture and portray within this character? And I was interested in what her answer to that question was, and whether there were any aspects that you then pulled into your performance from what she told you.
Yeah, so we sat down and I asked her if there's anything else that she wanted me to bring, and she said, I want you, I want you to kind of imagine what it would be like if your own mother died, because Sammy's mother in the story had passed away, and you don't really see any interactions after that soon, or you don't really see her kind of show that kind of. You don't really see her really put that or interact um, with her mom really. And so she told me, I want you to imagine that happening because that is something that is the root of all of this. And it's kind of like her pain is where this whole like ball of just like being angry and sad and being frustrated kind of started. And that ball of emotions is kind of what Sammy is during this whole film. And she kind of told me, yeah, I just want you to picture that root so that way we can build off of that. And she also in the course of filming, before she'd made me a playlist, a Sammy playlist, but it wasn't all just angsty songs. It was like a journey. It was like her journey in a playlist. And it was like the more angsty, angry songs to the more beautiful songs, and then the more like sadder, more magical fantasy songs. And that was really interesting to me because during the filming, she would go, think of this song or think of that song. And she would also, we'd also collaborate on a lot of things. If I wasn't clear on what an emotion would be, she would either say, okay, do it like this if she had an idea, or she was like, well, we'll do it a couple takes like this, or then we'll think of like this kind of emotion and then just do it. And sometimes she would just say, okay, now do what you think the character should be doing in this scene. And that was something that was really wonderful. I feel like because with a lot of directors, they have an exact image of what they want. They have an exact picture. They know what they want the character to do and what they want the character to be. But Kate was so ready to just collaborate with you and really have a hands-on experience, and that was something that was really wonderful.
And the relationship that Sammy has with her mom is a really beautiful part of the film, even though obviously her mom isn't there anymore. So we're just learning about it through your character. Did you have a lot of conversations with Kate and with the rest of the cast about what that family relationship was like before they lost their mom, so that you had that as a foundation to really understand where that feeling of frustration and anger was coming from?
Yeah, so I definitely talked to Kate about it. Uh, she had a whole story about how the mom had passed away, which was something that was really just amazing because she had this whole story that was not even included in the script that she didn't write down, but she had it in her head. She had an image. She knew what was coming before the script. And she told me like this is what happened to her mom. And like Sammy had her mom, and that was like her best friend. That was the one person who understood and felt the same thing Sammy felt. And that was like where that kind of where that frustration and anger and sadness came from, because she lost the one person that understood how her life was going and what she was thinking. And so that was kind of a talk we had throughout the production, especially during the more emotional scenes and the more kind of digging scenes where we're kind of getting more into Sammy's character and really figuring out who she is and where it comes from. So yeah, we definitely talked about that. I know that Leonardo Nam, who plays Angus, my father, he had his own kind of process. That was what was really interesting. Kate had a different process for each one of us. And so we kind of all collaborated on that. We kind of all talked about that. So yeah, we definitely talked about it throughout the film. And it was incredible to see this whole other story that came before Sammy's really just kind of play out in Kate's head, which was really awesome.
Right. And those scenes which play out in Kate's head, particularly when she's listening to the audio tape of a story that she has of a recording of her mom telling her one of the stories that she used to do all the time. And there's other moments where Kate brings in really beautiful imagination scenes and animation elements. How much did you know about what those scenes were going to end up looking like once she'd added all of the animation and all of the artistry to it?
I had no idea. It was so much more than just like little bits and pieces of fantasy for me. It was like I was trying to picture what it would be like, but I had no idea. Like Kate has such an artistic mind, and the way she made those scenes look, I was like that I would never even think of that. And I was blown away by the fantasy scenes because I was really excited when I read the script that I saw there were going to be some little bits and little pieces of fantasy and imagination. And it was so much cooler than what I had pictured it to be like, what I had pictured it to look like on screen when I saw it. So I was just like super excited. I'm super excited for the audience to see those scenes.
Yeah. I also think one of the interesting things about the way that we see Sammy in the film is that we always see her mostly in the context of her relationships with other adults rather than peers and friends her own age. You know, taking the intro to small business class, she's the only kid in the room. The friendship that you then strike up with Rhea Perlman's character, Margot, you know, is like an adult that she's looking at, not just as a mentor, but also as a friend as well. And so did you think about her as a character that overall had always been someone who related really well with adults and was very mature for her age in that way, even with everything that she's going through on the other side of grief with her mom?
I think that because she doesn't really fit in with the other kids, I don't think that Sammy, when I pictured Sammy, I didn't think that she'd normally fit in the beginning either. And she had this, after she lost her mother, she had this kind of pain, and that kind of made her closed off and didn't really help her with interactions with other kids. And I think because also her mother was her best friend, that she was more comfortable being with adults and interacting with adults. So I definitely think that that's definitely something to think about, though. I didn't even think about that.
It's also really interesting to see all the different ways that you manage to capture that feeling of anger that she has seething through her. You know, there's moments where she physically lashes out at objects around her, kind of like screams into a soft toy. But there's also moments where you just stand there very silently, kind of clenching your body and just kind of breathing through it. So, how did you and Kate figure out all the different ways in which you wanted to have this character to express her anger so that it didn't just come across as, oh, it's just a stereotypical angry teenage kid?
Yeah, we definitely had to, we talked through it a lot. That was one thing that was really awesome. We talked about it. It wasn't that like a director had an idea and was just trying to like get that idea. We talked about it. We collaborated. We went back and forth, and that was something that was really lovely because in that way we were able to talk about it and really able to figure it out and get it so that it looked just right, so that it wasn't, oh, it's just an angry kid. it was more of a, it was a deep rooted anger. It was a feeling of frustration, a feeling of kind of like, it was a feeling of anger that's kind of like in the pit of your stomach, kind of is just like twisting at you all the time. And that was something that we really kind of had to figure out when we were going through Sammy's character, was how would she express that? How would she make it so it doesn't, it's, you can tell that it's that deep rooted frustration and hurt. Like, how could we figure that out and show that on screen? So that was definitely one of the talks we had.
Yeah. And then even within some of the scenes, because there's the whole plot line where her dad is getting remarried, and that's also one of the things that she's struggling with. And there's these really fun imagination moments where we see her performing sawing her potential stepmother in half as a magic trick. And I was interested in the way that that gave you another insight into just what's going on inside of her imagination and inside her mind in a different way than you usually get to access a character.
Yeah, so we also talked about that. We talked about a lot of things when we sat down for that first time. We're going over the script. We were figuring out, and she asked me like, why do you think Sammy feels this way towards her stepmother? And she does, I said that Sammy must feel like her father's trying to replace her mother. Because that is something that I cannot imagine going through. My mother is my best friend. She's done so much for me. I cannot imagine feeling that way, like feeling that hurt and that sadness. And then not only that, but having your father try to kind of replace that and kind of move on, you know? And I don't think that she wasn't okay with that. But another big thing was that her father never asked her if she was okay with it. She never asked, hey, do you feel comfortable with this? Like, I think that that's where Sammy's kind of attitude towards her potential stepmother comes from. And it was, it was actually kind of hard to do that because Paulina is such a sweet woman. It was really hard to be mean to all the people, all the cast, because they're all such sweet people, and we all had this kind of family dynamic offset, which was really beautiful. Even with the crew, we had kind of that family dynamic. But being mad at them was just like so hard.
You also, in terms of her relationship with her dad, built out, the complexities of that really well, in the fact that when her dad's partner is around, she's very different to that moment where they go to the arcade together and he finally managed to push past her walls a little bit. So did you and Leo talk about what the different dynamics were going to be, depending on when it was just the two of them, when it was the two of them and her sister, and when her potential stepmom's also in the room? Because there's so many different dynamics and layers to that.
We kind of just, I think that both Leo and I, because we're both actors, we kind of play off each other's energy. So we just jumped right into it, like those different scenes. The first scene actually that we shot together was the scene where it was the most heightened anger scene between me and Angus. And it was interesting because we hadn't really had time, because we had limited time. We hadn't really had time to talk about what had come before that. And so we kind of just jumped right into it. And that was the first scene I ever shot with him, like the first day. And I was like, how am I supposed to be like so angry at this one person that I've barely talked to? And so we were still trying to figure that kind of rhythm out. But definitely at the arcade, I think we just kind of jumped into it, where at first I was like, okay, Sammy might be a little less like, why are we, like more like, why are we here? Like, why are you doing this? But as we kind of see that sequence go on, we see her become more comfortable. We see her kind of have more fun and let those walls kind of fall a little bit. And that was something that I really loved about that scene, was that you kind of got to see Sammy's more, just like a tiny bit of her more colorful side and who she used to be, which is something that's really beautiful about Sammy, is that you can kind of find those little bits and pieces in the movie where you can see who she used to be and you can see her colorful side rather than her angry, angry dark side. So yeah, that arcade scene was definitely one of the more fun scenes and definitely one of the more colorful Sammy scenes.
And then the other person that really manages to push past her walls, who we mentioned before, is Rhea Perlman's character Margot, who's a magician. And there's a great moment when the two of them first meet and Rhea says, "Oh, I see a lot of myself in you." And there are similarities between these two characters. They're both people who have gone through really difficult times, have found some sort of very outside of the box creative way to channel their emotions and their feelings, but Sammy's in the position where she's learning this and she wants to emulate her and be like her in certain ways. So how much were you looking at that character and thinking about the ways that Sammy would want to be a little bit more like her, and what some of those similarities between the two of them would be?
Yeah, Sammy definitely at first is kind of like, you're kind of weird and doesn't really like her. Kind of has that wall up, the same kind of wall she has for Paulina's character. That like, nope, you're not getting past. But when she sees that first magic show, this is one of the things Kate and I kind of talked through that scene, because we wanted to be able to see that Sammy was partially enjoying herself, or at least enjoying herself a little bit. There were certain times where you see like the kids in class like be so excited over this magic show, and I definitely wanted to kind of give like hints of the smile or hints of, oh wow, that's actually really cool, but kind of when she's being looked at by Margot, she wants to be like, nope, nope. But as time goes on, you kind of see her drop that wall. You see her kind of let Margot in. And as she does that, she kind of finds this familiarity, the same kind of friendship she might have had with her mom. And that is something that I think Kate and I really talked about. I kind of asked her, like, why is Margot the one person Sammy really like kind of lets in and really lets see herself that hurt and that anger. She was like, because that's kind of the same relationship. And I was like, okay. So I really wanted to bring that to the screen, because it's like, I kind of wanted to bring that to the screen because that was the one time where that relationship is like one of the only times we see Sammy kind of happy, where we see her kind of open up and allow those more happy, and allow her anger to kind of loosen and kind of fall away. And that is a really beautiful relationship.
Yeah. And then Sammy also starts learning some of the magic tricks as well. And as you were kind of looking at all the different things, there's a lot of detail about there's so many different ways that you can shuffle a card, even just sleight of hand. What were the most useful tips that you found in terms of just figuring out that very specific sleight of hand when it came to the magic scenes?
Oh, look effortless. We had a magic teacher, Kayla, and she's wonderful. She was very patient with us, because me and Ria, the first time we met, was at a magic show. We went to a magic show together at the Magic Castle, which was super fun. And then we went to a magic session with Kayla to learn kind of the what we called the zombie ball and the cards and like the Tenkai palms. And one of the things she told us is, don't look like you're trying to do it. Just look effortless. Like look like nothing is difficult, nothing is hard. It's like easy. It's the easiest thing in the world. But the truth is, it's so hard. It's so hard. Even just that like little palm I had to do for the first magic scene that we had, I was like, I was practicing and practicing and practicing. And sometimes I would practice with the Kate actually gave me the deck of cards that Ria's character that Margot gives Sammy. She was like, here, just practice with these. They're what you're going to be using. And so I was like, okay, practice with these. And I cannot tell you how many times I tried to do it and the card would just fling out everywhere, or it would fall out of my hand, or you could see it. It's just like you kind of really appreciate those people who can even do the smallest of illusions like that, because you don't realize how much work goes into it. It made me appreciate magicians a lot more.
It's also so interesting that Kate explores the idea that magic is a way of telling a story, and that's kind of Sammy's world into it as well. And when you were putting together that scene where she's performing and telling a story and her family are in the audience watching, and she's doing the magic show, but it's really not about the magic show. What were the conversations that you and Kate had about what these different tricks would be, what the magic would be that would really tell the story that she wanted to convey, and what she emotionally wanted to be telling her family in that moment?
So we definitely talked about kind of how Sammy's emotions would be. through the magic show, and you kind of see her letting her color show, letting her emotions out through the magic show and through the different tricks that she does. And you're right, it's not about the magic, it's not about the tricks. It's about the story. And it's not only just like a story that she came up with, it's the story of her. And it's the story about her mom and one of her greatest memories. And that is something that I thought was really beautiful, that she kind of was able to tell that story and let people in, but not only that, telling the world that like this is why, this is the reason. She's telling the audience that. And that was something that I really wanted to. She was telling her family that, like, that was her way of showing her family that she was frustrated and she was feeling anger. And that was a really beautiful thing that I thought that was like just amazing.
And with the way that you were mentioning earlier, how Kate had different styles in working with every single one of you in the cast based on how everybody liked to work and how they approached their craft, and working on scenes with Rhea, what were the things that you had the opportunity to really just observe and learn from in how she approaches her craft and how she would come into scenes and find them?
Yeah. So Rhea has been an iconic actor forever. And it was such an honor to work with her. And you kind of, in the beginning, I was kind of nervous, to be honest with you. I was really nervous to be uh, like kind of working with such an amazing, iconic person. But when I met her, it was immediate connection, and she was just so wonderful, and she was so easygoing. She was very easygoing, upbeat, and she kind of brought that into Margot as well. Whenever she would start scenes, she would kind of just have fun with it, you know? And that was something that I lived. She would make jokes in between scenes. She would say a line a different way than it was intended, or she would improvise. And it was just one thing that I learned was that if you're having fun with your job, then it's not your job. It's another fun thing that you get to do every day. And that was something that I definitely learned. Another thing that I learned is that you kind of make people feel comfortable. You make the other person feel kind of comfortable with you, and you welcome them into this character, and that can kind of help you guys find your rhythm together. And it kind of sets the tone for how you want the movie to look, or how you want the characters to kind of interact. And so that was something that I definitely learned from her.
And you also mentioned earlier that you have a huge interest in eventually directing yourself as well. And so from the experience of working on this project and your collaboration that you had with Kate, and the opportunity just to watch the way that she works, and even just the way that you get to watch on every single set, the way that all these different directors work, what were the things that you really took away from Kate as a director that you think you might pull into your own work as a director in the future?
Yeah, definitely. Having Kate and Carolyn Mao, our producer, was really awesome because they were very collaborative. I use that word a lot, but they were very collaborative. It was like you talked, and you kind of all had a say in what was going to happen in that scene, or what was going to happen with your character. And that's something that I think, like, communication was definitely there, and it was definitely more. It was definitely hands on with her. Kate made sure that the characters and the actors were both kind of comfortable, and that you were kind of working together and making sure that that energy kind of flowed through the scene. And it was a very happy set. It was a very joyful set. We kind of all had that family dynamic, even with the crew, like I mentioned earlier. We all had that kind of family dynamic because it was a smaller crew, but that's really nice because you kind of have that close knit, tight group. And it was very just like, it makes a very joyful set. And with Kate, what I found interesting was that Kate had different ideas of ways that the characters' layers were. Like, um, she made a music playlist for me. Like I said earlier, she made a music playlist for me that was kind of like the character's journey and the character's emotions through music, and that was something that really actually helped me, because during filming she would just like go, okay, think of this song, and that was like something that was really helpful because that made me be able to capture that emotion more. And she also gave me the notebook that Sammy uses in the film. She gave me the prop, and she was like, just doodle in here. And I love art, so I was really excited. But doodle as Sammy, and that was something that was really interesting because you don't get to do that a lot. And that was something that was really fun and interesting, and definitely another way for me to explore my character, but also doing something that I love as well.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on everything with this movie. It's such a wonderful performance. And thank you so much for talking with us all about this today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.